Hey, welcome to Improv FAQ at length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions about surrounding them. I'm James Quesada.
Hey, everyone, and I'm Bob Wick.
And this is our very first live recorded episode. And it will also eventually be available as a podcast episode. But for right now, we are doing it live just to see how it goes. And we're going to do a Q&A episode for this first one. We thought that would be a good fitting live episode because we have a handful of questions that have been submitted that we just haven't found a place for in our general episodes. And we also thought that the live format obviously would lend itself to any live questions if they do come up. We have plenty of questions to get through for the hour. If not, but if you are watching live, we'll just make little reminders that you are more than welcome to post your questions as we go in this episode. So
just say hi.
Or just say hi.
Just say hello.
Whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
So the first batch of questions that we're going to look at are from our friend Matthew Flickinger, who long time ago, back in January of this year, which feels like a freaking
it feels so long. What is time anymore, James?
Yeah, just
James,
prehistoric era ago. Back in January when I first launched the Improv FAQ channel, or at least started promoting it, I made a post about it, and I asked if anybody had any suggestions for topics or questions that they thought would be interesting to post in the comments. And Matthew posted a bunch of really great ones. And again, I just I've gotten to some of these in the regular episodes, but there's so many, and a lot of them are really fun and nuanced. So I'd like to get to the rest of them now. And thank you, Matthew, for sending these questions. So let's start with this first one, which is, why are there always chairs in improv? Which I think is, I guess it seems obvious, but it's an interesting question in the fact of like, we use chairs because it helps with levels. A scene is going to have people seated. It's just a very functional and basic thing to have that helps without like
light.
Yeah. The specific chairs that are pretty common in improv and sketch are those lightweight kind of rounded ones. The other part of it, though, that's a little bit less obvious is that it doesn't take away much from the open imagination. It's still a pretty versatile tool for things that it's not meant for. So you can you can use it to stand on and be on a Rapunzel on a tower or whatever, which is my go-to.
Plus, it also saves the improviser, because anybody who's ever initiated a car scene by squatting down will tell you they can't wait for the scene to be over within the first 45 seconds. You're doing that against the wall squat. It's a leg killer. So, plus, like when we do our object work, we try to get as close to the actual object as possible. So when you do drive a car or something along those lines, you're in a sitting position and you want to, look the part.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the other like kind of hidden question in this is like, why is it mostly only chairs? In forensics, speaking in acting, on the acting side, we kind of had similar things going on, because it's also about no costumes or set pieces. And we would use the actual like rule book was that you could only use chairs, stools, and boxes. And there were rules against using things like benches, or like what constitutes a bench. Nothing with like wheels. It can't be like painted or dressed up and whatnot. But I just think it's interesting. I've seen that in, you see that in like black box theaters, essentially just like shapes, that you can use. And I think like a box or a cube, and stools are also really nice and helpful to have. So personally, I think that would add more. We as a kind of recurring theme in our conversations, we've talked about physicality and just having both wanting to see more of that and whatever. And I think that like
Yes.
if you have things like chairs that are both functional and don't take away from the open imagination, that can add more playfulness to how you're staging things.
Right. Well, just to add on to that, because at the beginning you did mention we tend to use a specific shape of chair, which is very boring. It's just this black simple chair with the curvy inside, just to make it a little more sturdy, I guess. The IKEA style of chair, if you will.
Yeah.
And I almost think of the chair as a suggestion itself. You can take a suggestion and just the suggested chair, sit down. Or what interesting thing can you do with this chair? What can you build with it? Can you turn yourself into an ogre by using nothing but chairs? Because I've seen people use chairs in ridiculous ways, very playful ways. And I kind of like it when they do that with a suggestion. Just because someone says the word dentist doesn't mean you have to initiate as a dentist itself. What does that word mean to you? What does this shape mean to you? How can you use it in a more interesting way? And I think that's the challenge, right? We don't have props, we don't have set pieces, or anything like wardrobe. We have to play with what's given to us, and it's supposed to be minimalist. So the chair is a physical representation of our minimalist style.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. See how much we cracked that open for such a simple question.
First 15 minutes done. 45 to go. What else is there?
In between,
why do we use the spotlight? I got you.
In between questions here, I'll just mention again that if anybody's tuning in and you want to drop us a question for our conversation, feel free to do so. We have a list of questions otherwise that we're going to be making our way throughout the episode. Flickinger's next question is, how can you pull off dramatic improv? Which I think is interesting. And have you ever done it, Bob? Have you ever done? I guess like maybe I've done like improv on camera for something that was not meant to, like a commercial or something.
Right.
Not necessarily meant to be funny, but it's also not necessarily meant to be like compelling storytelling. I don't think I've done that. Drama, entertainment, and improv.
I haven't done a whole set where it's all dramatic, but I know I like to inject dramatic scenes in a silly set just to give the audience a breather. When I was in conservatory, I had the opportunity to take a master's class at the Ant with Nancy, and it was improv for sketch writing. And we were all writing well, not me, because it was my first sketch, and usually your first couple of sketches are absolute bullshit. I'm not gonna lie, it was rough. She's an amazing person and spend gold on a shit. But but along the way, I learned so much. Like, being in a room with like a super talented person it's just amazing. But she said something that stuck with me. Like, where is the awe moment in this? Like, taking all these sketches and making a review out of it. Where's the awe moment? And it really opened my eyes. Like, oh, it doesn't have to be silly, playful, jokey jokes all the time. It really gave me a new goal. So rather than trying to make people laugh all the time, which is fun and probably 99% of the reason why we get into this thing, there's a lot of good in just making go, ah. And if you can do that in a couple of seconds, like if you can make a character that's so relatable or put him in a situation that tugs at someone's heartstrings, that is also entertaining. That's why there's the two masks, right? The drama and the comedy. Like you want to show both sides of that. And that also gives you your total set some depth, because it's not just fun and silly and funny, which is great. I'm not knocking it, because I love that stuff. But if you also give the audience a chance to go, and then your next scene's a super fun, funny scene, like you get that much more out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, that in improv comedy, that's very valuable. And I guess more to the specific question of how do you pull off dramatic improv, like as a whole, it's like, for me, it's like I guess easy enough, not easy enough, but it's definitely like one um one type of energy in a comedic set, and I think it like, but I know how to use it to like highlight the rest of the show as comedy. Um, Whereas with dramatic improv, if it's like the whole show is that way, I guess there's also not a rule that like there can't be funny moments in drama. You just don't want it to go off the rails. So I suppose that's one thing is that like you probably want to keep it like especially grounded and close to reality, because it's just so much more likely that if you go into like sci-fi fantasy absurdity world that you're going to lose touch with the dramatic, believably dramatic element of it. But yeah, I think I would have a hard time doing dramatic improv, and I guess this is the kind of thing that like as we're trying to build a community conversation out of this stuff, if anyone has experience with dramatic improv, wants to chime in with some tips or kind of philosophy mottos that help keep it that way and make it successful, that would be great to hear. Because I think it's probably a very difficult thing to do. There's something inherently funny to me about the idea of improvising, of making a show up as you go. When it's kind of slippery and rough around the edges, there's funny to that. And even when it's like successful or like in genre and on the nose in these well acted moments, there's something delightful and funny about that to me as well.
I don't feel like I answered the question. So I'm just gonna say this. Like my simple advice, like my go-to advice would be play more vulnerable in your characters. Like absolutely everything means that much more to you. Your relationships are that much closer and more important to you. And just let everything affect you. And that's what a dramatic person does, and just really play into it. And you can add silly things into it, but play them real and play them as if they're this is the most important moment in my life, and I'm going to put it on stage, and I'm going to show you the real me. And I'm speaking for the character, of course, but that's my go-to answer.
That's a great answer. And yeah, I'm sure that we could do more with just the kind of what do you call it? The like comedy drama theory question here, because especially with like comedy in like the IO origin points, that mantra of truth in comedy, it's like be real, be vulnerable, is something that you also hear in order to make your comedy more interesting and funny, like to emphasize the comedy. So like what kind of realness, what kind of truth is better applied to comedy versus drama is also just an interesting question. If like if that can be an approach that leads to either result, then like what really is the difference?
And then I would take off like not just on stage, because I've known people who've completely changed their personality as they became better improvisers because they applied that to their real life. I would say I'm a great example of that. The Westland guy that worked at the plant in intro one compared to who I am as a person now and how I see the world. And maybe that comes with age as well. But like when you're able to be honest on stage, it makes it that much easier to be honest with yourself and with other people you care about in real life. Because then you ask yourself the same questions, like, why don't I be more direct? Why don't I just tell you my want rather than, keep it locked inside and make it a reveal if it doesn't happen, or it just how to that got deep.
Right? Yeah.
So right now I'm being dramatic, and just to show you how easy it could be if you just want to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So just the tip of the iceberg there, but just a very interesting question about dramatic
we could do like 2 hours on that one. Yeah. I'd actually would like to talk to Matt about that, because I think he's really, when he performs, he plays very honest and real.
Yeah. I'd love to have him on, so we'll have to we'll have to reach out to him for sure.
Good dude.
So the next question from Matthew is, how much does a team really need to rehearse, and what should teams do at rehearsal? which is something that we've kind of touched on inside of other conversations, but maybe we can just like put a self-contained answer on it. My initial answer is once a week is ideal. Once a week, 2-hour rehearsals would be ideal. The truth is that I think that like if improv was something that you could do for money, as easily as not as easily, I guess, but like if it were the same kind of culture that you could, become actor equity for improv,
Right.
I would love to be in improv rehearsals 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, absolutely.
But then that kind of also goes to the second part of the question of what do you do with those rehearsals? But I guess before we get there, what's your initial answer to how much should a team rehearse, Bob?
I love your answer. I do think. Well, I mean, there's factors, right? Because I think where you are, as far as are you a student? Have you been doing it for a while? Because what are you trying to gain from your rehearsals? Are you a new group, or are you new to each other? Like, for example, are you a launch group that just were formed by a bunch of people who auditioned, or are you like Joe and Travis who've known each other for years? So you already have that shorthand down. So now you have to just like talk about presentation or whatever you want to talk about. So it's really having the goal before the rehearsal would probably be my first step. And then how long does it take you to get to that goal? Because a group of strangers, there's so much to work on. Like you don't even know each other and you're trying to build this trust and shorthand. So even like going out to dinner can be considered rehearsal because now I know that much more about you, and the more you learn about somebody, the easier it is to play with them because the reference levels, life experience, you can tap into characters they maybe like to do or like relatives they like to impersonate. And then I also think it's so rare that you actually need to work on the improv when you're rehearsing, unless you're a newer troupe, because sometimes like you have like an advanced one troupe who just learn long form. Maybe that is something you need to fine tune your actual improv. But if you are a group of veterans who've never played together before, you might want to work on a form that you've never tried. So that might take less time because you're just talking about mechanics rather than the scenes within the form. So I mean, yeah. But ideally, I would suggest if you're playing regularly, what are you comfortable with? And if you could do once a week, I lean towards that. But because we're all adults and we have life stuff like work,
pandemics happen.
Pandemics, every other week at least.
Yeah. And I will also say we've mentioned this before in our conversations that attendance is so much more valuable than frequency. Right. If you really want to grow and get better as a team, that I would rather rehearse once or twice a month with everybody there than every week where half or a quarter of the people are missing. You just can't make it. It's like you're gonna frustrate yourself
because you do that thing where your next rehearsal is catching people up on what you did on the last rehearsal, so it's boring to the people who actually attend, and then I think it builds a little resentment, like even
yes.
I already did this, I do this for fun, and now you're making it boring because I'm repeating myself, or it's
yeah. And I also liked that you pointed out like where you're at really plays a big part in what you should be doing at your rehearsals, because I think if you're a group that's still in classes or like within your first couple of years of improvising, some programs you can complete within like a year and a half, but if you're still within like your first year or two out of classes, you might want to just run reps on the same kind of stuff that you learn in those classes, depending on what kind of like school approach that you're trying to go for, like doing specific character exercises or like who, what, where, game of the scene, whatever it may be. That's kind of like the pillars of the playing style that you're looking to work toward. That it's just like additional outside class time is how your rehearsal should be treated, is getting those fundamentals of yes and imagination down, just getting comfortable with the cooperation and chemistry between you and your scene partners. Once that's no longer really the focus and you have those basics down, it's still really nice to do just like drills and be like, this, we can do a 2-hour rehearsal just doing scenes on who, what, where. But you know, I my philosophy is that at a certain point you are either workshopping technical skills, which can be anything from the mechanics of a form to accents and physicality and you know, the acting technique. Those are like skills, and then there's also sense of play, which is just like, let's do stuff that's so much more subjective and kind of set up the environment for free play and get ourselves having fun and taking risks and all that, being in the moment and stuff like that.
You know, I guess the general rule would be, before your show, do you feel ready as a group, not just as an individual, because you're creating by committee. So if there's one person in that group who doesn't feel 100%, then maybe it's time to kick up the amount of rehearsal you're doing, you know, or check in with each other and trust each other and have these conversations. If you're feeling over rehearsed, then maybe it's time to pull back a little bit. You know, get that fear back in your stomach, so you're excited to be on stage, because there is such thing as over rehearsing. So I mean, check in with each other before the show and after the show, and just have an honest conversation.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good pocket of answers. We got
2 minutes left. Oh man, no.
We got our buddy Tom joining in the comments here. Thanks for joining, Tom.
Hey, Brad.
And I guess Brad's in here too.
Yeah. Sharing. That's cool.
And for anyone else watching, just a reminder that if you would like to chime in with a question about improv that we can answer as we do our episode here, please feel free. Otherwise, we have a list of questions that we are currently making our way through. And I really, Matthew has probably 12 more questions on this list, and we could do the whole episode on that. But we have a couple more. We'll put a pin in Matthew's. Come back to it, maybe another live stream, and or when we get a chance to have Matthew on as a guest. And then let's move over to some of the other questions that we've had submitted. We have one from Maylin. Who asks, does it look better to wear more professional clothes on stage, or does it really matter if you dress more casual? I think this is a pretty common conversation or debate. What do you think, Bob?
I believe the answer would be situational. Like, how much is how much are you playing for a paying audience? Because, you know, I'm not going to say you have to dress professional, because that means something different to everybody, but you should dress, I don't know, I don't want to say clean, but your clothes should be clean. But you know,
that's one quality. They should be clean.
One down. But you should dress for the part. I did. We talked about it during the homeschool episode. Like, I do like that look of, you know, the white shirt, the tie. You know,
you got everyone to wear suits and business attire.
I do like that
for
look.
A festival in Atlanta.
It's such an asshole move. But also, like, I think there's times where dressing casual, like just a plain t-shirt and jeans, is fine. Like, if the setting's casual, like for a jam or something, don't wear a suit for a jam. But you know what? Dress so you can move. You know, don't make sure you're never restricted. You know, I probably wouldn't, but if I wanted to wear a skirt, I would make sure that, you know, if I have to play a cat or something, you wouldn't see my no bits.
Yeah, you're wearing leggings.
You know.
That's my that's my number one answer, really, is that, like, you can wear whatever you want so long as you can comfortably perform to the best, at your best in it. You shouldn't be wearing anything that makes you worry about damaging the clothes. You shouldn't be wearing clothes that are so nice that
Yes.
you're worried about scuffing them up or the Go Comedy stage. I've gotten a lot of blue paint rubbed off
Yeah.
on my knees or butt, like because I'm scooting around, and then I've got a blue streak on my khakis or something. So I learned being a physical player that, like, okay, well, I can't wear khakis because
Right.
that blue paint doesn't come out too easily. So um, that's something to think about too.
Right.
Is you might get some scuffs or even tears, and so on top of just like not obviously, but to your point, Bob, of not wanting to restrict movement, you also don't want to worry about the damages that happen every once in a while.
Right. My at Second City, I don't know if it was the Second City rule or my instructor at the time just wanted us to do that, but we wore the traditional, like basically the Brothers get up, where it's black suit, white shirt, solid color tie. We weren't supposed to wear anything that that was flashy or distracting, because you're trying to dress in a way where you can morph into different characters. So it's kind of like what we were talking about, the chairs. They're so boring, but they're also that way on purpose, so you can apply to different things. My first suit I bought specifically for performing was this from like a vintage shop or like a secondhand store. I think it cost me like $20, but it gave me the freedom to. I'm not going to say I looked good, but I looked professional, and I didn't care what happened to that suit at all. It could have got trashed.
Yeah. And I guess maybe it's like, look like you're going on either a date or to an interview, and like that's pretty much the spectrum. Is that like if you're casual, it should be nice casual. If you're going on a casual date, if it's nice, you might look more like a interview dress up, but also with that cap of not wanting to get it have it restrict your movement or worry about getting tears or scuffs or anything. I gotta say, like one time early moving to New York, I was watching a show. It was like an indie show, but there's people in New York, especially wearing shorts on stage is or even a tank top, so much more acceptable. And I understood why being here a little longer, because like when it's the summer and you're in that pedestrian mode, walking everywhere, like you can't just be wearing a button down or even a polo on the hottest New York days and walking around, because you're going to sweat your ass off. And that's not going to be a good look on stage either. However, like if it's part of your show aesthetic to be kind of like super casual, cool casual, give no fucks or whatever, fine. But like that it has to feel like it's something that you're doing on purpose. Otherwise, I've seen somebody like wear a hat, like a trucker hat, tank top, cut off jean shorts, and like Birkenstocks to perform, and I'm like, I think I hate improv. I'm just sitting in the audience like, what is going on?
I'm pretty anti-hat, because a hat says something about a character. So like you think about your stage picture, you automatically assume something. And I know I'm a stickler for this stuff, and but I don't think you should wear a hat unless there's, for lack of a better term, like a medical reason. I don't know. or religious, like,
Sure. Yes, there it is.
Yeah. Medical or religious would be my only, and that's fine. But other than, and honestly, like even with casual clothes, I do like the rule, like you probably should try to do something like, if you can go to like a plain solid color tee, if you're going to wear a t-shirt, I lean towards that rather than having something with a band name, or, I don't like it when people wear something like, you ever seen those black shirts that have like, I don't know, like one line phrases on it. They're supposed to be clever. That annoys me. I don't want to do that.
Shirts that say stuff or have distracting graphics. I guess like it's the mobility and not wanting to damage your stuff. And then another just the guideline is it shouldn't be distracting to like the neutral playing space of creating character and implying character wardrobe.
Yeah.
people are trying to read your shirt instead of watching the scene. That's the problem.
If the funniest part of your set was your shirt, then you need to take some more classes.
Yeah. And shout out from Tom to Jinko jeans, which I definitely wore in like middle school to just try to keep up with the cool kids. And perfect for mobility with those barrel size leg holes.
You can put so much in your pockets when you're wearing Jankos. It's like having like 2 briefcases stuck to your legs. I love it.
Okay, great. So that's Malin's question about attire. And Bob, do you have some on your side?
Yes. I believe we have one from we have a few from a couple students here. This first one's from our buddy Matt Wixom. Sorry. Wixom is a city. Wixon is a friend.
Matt.
Yeah. I'm just drinking pop here.
Wixom is a city. Wixon is our friend.
Yeah. Put that on a t-shirt. I would wear that. Where do you think the opportunity for innovation? Oh, sorry. Where do you think there is an opportunity for innovation with improv?
That's a.
Do you think there's room to explore and expand the essence of what an improv show can be?
Oh, there's more. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more time. Do you think there's room to explore
the essence of what an improv show can be?
I mean, obviously right now with the virtual realm, that's definitely a big arena for innovation. I think that people are, you and I are both not actively participating in the improv online, but I think it's really cool, and I support the things that are going on that are playing with that medium, because I think that's the thing to do is to be like, okay, what can we do with it? My favorite thing that I've seen so far is Julia's team, The Cast, which is a magnet show, and on stage it's an improvised community theater style play. And they did in the virtual medium, they did a improvised reading, an improvised script read. I'm missing the term here.
Yeah.
Table read. Yeah, improvised table read of a script that's never been written, and that was really cool. I thought that was a nice way to adapt their specific form to the online world, and I'm sure that there's other stuff going on too. I think people are starting to finally kind of like tackle the musical thing, which I think is really fun. North Coast, we've had Rachel Rosenthal on here before, and she's with North Coast, and I know that that's a improvised hip hop show, and they've started to do to get their streams steady enough to have a beatboxer like they normally do on stage, and the panels of people doing freestyle hip hop to that beat. So that's got to be technically a challenge, and I'm sure that they've gone out of their way to set it up as tight as possible. And that's a very cool thing to see too, is musical improv on virtual. Go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
I was going to say, outside of the virtual question, let's talk about that. Is like what else? That's exactly what it's. Yeah. On the hypothetical stages out there that are all ghostlighted at the moment.
I can't speak for everywhere, but what I'd noticed about like the places, I mostly spent time in Detroit, but also in Cincinnati. The things I've noticed is people stay on the stage. Like if we think about going back to stage picture, we put boundaries on ourselves. The folks who do improv watch a lot of improv, and I think we almost set up paradigms of what an improv show is, and then we start to chip away. Like we've all had those troops or talk to troops who are like, our thing is we break all the rules on purpose. And then you watch it and they're still sticking to the rules. They're still yes-anding. They're still doing, but they may be hiding it or in denial that they're doing it because these things, essentially work. That's why we learn them in the first place, the basics. But I like it when people treat the theater as if the whole theater's a stage, rather than just the stage itself. Don't let a carpenter tell you where to play.
Mhm.
Let the whole interact. Um, People are afraid of breaking the fourth wall, but I've seen shows where you watch two-man no show, and I don't think they've ever had a fourth wall. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
the interaction with audience members is different. Like, yeah, just pushing your limits, or pushing what a scene can be rather than what you're used to seeing. And I think there's always an innovation along that line. I don't have a list of things I would like to see,
Yeah.
but I know some things I have saw and liked and try to utilize myself. I do like when we go off stage. I do like when we use our imaginations and surprise
Yeah.
people.
Absolutely. I think that bending reality is something that
Right.
I would love to play around with more in terms of how to innovate what our normal. um I'm gonna make a quick side disclaimer here that so we're broadcasting in StreamYard, which I think is an amazing platform. One of the only downsides of it is that unlike Zoom, it doesn't have a lot of noise rejection built into it. So
Right.
you're probably hearing some. I record right at the window of New
Right.
York City street. So I apologize if through our StreamYard ability to live stream, I apologize for the trade-off of the noise that you
Or
might be
are
hearing.
you innovating the way we do Zoom calls?
Yeah. Um, bending reality is definitely something I would love to play around with more.
Yeah.
Things like the elastic time cannon, things like the JTS
Great
Brown
example.
and
Yeah.
freeform, and the stuff that we were doing with like Javelin to just kind of like figure out this organic surrealism. I really love that. I know that that's the improv can be a hard enough sell to begin with. Like kind of avant-garde improv isn't any more of an easy sell. But it is, the kind of stuff that like two-man no show do. And when it's successful, it can bring the house down in just a new, different, special way. And that's definitely one area that I would love to play around with more. The other two things that I really would love to see to innovate with more, if I had the resources to do it, would be things like character fondue. Or I wish Chris Moody could chime in here, because he's always talking about this show. I think it's like a touring show where a group of improvisers will go to theater spaces, and like whatever stagecraft that they have set up for the play that's currently running, they'll take over that space and they'll do an improvised show using
Oh,
those set pieces, and that environment. It's cool because it's
yeah.
like it's still unscripted, it's still improvised, but unlike all the stuff we were talking about like chairs and stools and cubes leaving it kind of blank and black box, they're like going to actually use like the couches and the curtains and
Right.
the barricade that's set up, or whatever it is. And Character Fondue is a show where the cast, uh, 6 people in the cast, each person comes dressed in a full character getup as a magician, or a mad scientist, or whatever. Elaborate. You can get as elaborate as you want. You come fully costumed, and then none of the other improvisers know what anyone else is going to do.
Right.
You're just bringing your own character, and then you get on stage and do an unscripted show. That's really cool too. I like the idea of introducing costumes and props and set pieces in a way that typically we don't put into use for the reasons we've talked about. But like, okay, what if we decided to utilize those things?
If you, I'm just thinking, we've all run character workshops. It's usually one of your go-to, like when I'm say you like if you're an improviser, instructor, or you're doing a workshop at a festival, or if you're just going to a festival, you'll see character this, character that, how to establish character, blah blah blah. And I always notice this thing of when people are tasked to pimp a character, or come up with a character, like character fondue, it's always these elaborate, amazing characters, but then cut to them playing usually, and it's just like a heightened version of themselves, and the situation creates a character. I would like to see more
Yeah.
of that. Like, that'd be innovative. Like, establish, like, walk on with a huge, bigger than life, or maybe even like, I love that thing where multiple people create one character. I think there was
Oh yeah,
uh, an exercise you used to like
the
coach.
shared monologue where people step
Yeah,
out. Yeah,
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 yeah.
that's very
So
cool too.
like, I love that kind of thing. Like, that's something you don't see often. Like, I just like, you know, taking stuff that people don't usually do and making it your thing. Or I don't want to make it normal, but just, using it more would be interesting to me. Like,
Yeah,
there's so much to innovate. Like, you think of all the gears it takes to have like a strong, if we're just talking narrative scene happen, there's so much, like the emotion, the characters, story arc, location, and just heightening that. And then then you go to presentation.
yeah,
How do you want to tell the story? Because essentially that's what we're doing. We're storytellers who use our bodies and our voices to share that story. So how do we do that in a different way?
yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and those other, yeah, all those interesting stage pieces are both, I guess, for like the reality bending surrealism. There are ways to do that because you have lack of costume and props and set pieces, and there are ways to explore that with those devices as well.
Yeah.
Tom has a follow up question about character fondue, asking, "Do you stay in character off stage before being called on stage for character fondue?" Um, and then he has an immediate follow up of, "Never mind my fondue question. I just heard myself and the high bar that would set. Being in character the entire time would be method acting."
I
Which,
love it though.
yeah, which is true.
Yeah.
But like, and the answer is that it was never a requirement. But like somebody like Tom Novick probably going to be messing around in
Oh,
character.
my first thought was Aaron Johnstone. Like,
Yeah,
woke
yeah,
up, put on a jersey, it was that character entire time, made
yeah, yeah, yeah,
some probably really cool breakfast,
yeah.
and then showed up in that.
So it's as much as it helps
Yeah.
you and makes it fun for you, but not a requirement. What they did do, I don't know if you ever saw the show, Tom, but for anyone who hasn't, the way that they would introduce their character is that at the top of the show, instead of getting a suggestion, each character would just give an introductory monologue, in just like 60 to 90 seconds of, this is who I am, this is my deal, and a sense of who they are, one by one, until the whole cast has been introduced, and then lights down and come back up on the show as they mix and mingle with each other. Tom also has a question about. Thanks for being here, Tom.
Yeah,
First
Tom.
of all, we appreciate
Tom.
the participation. He also asked a
And Brad.
question, or made a reference to, yeah, and Brad.
Yeah.
Um,
Are we sure none of these are Brad questions and he's just using Tom's account?
wait,
Can we
wait,
get
wait,
an
wait.
answer on that? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Hacked in.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Tom made a reference to
Oh,
the show that
yeah.
Heather and I did called Dycentennial, which was a Halloween show where we played a ghost couple that was returning for their 100-year anniversary of dying, and we would walk into the stage and chit chat with the audience, and then that would inspire our characters to tell stories of things that we've observed as ghosts in human beings over the past 100 years. And that was also a show. The main reason I wanted to point it out is because that was also a show where we would use a small hat rack and a table setup of different costume pieces. We would have like some hats and other like head costume piece gear. And then some like, glasses or masks or whatever, and then like some like scarves and jackets or whatever. And that was also a lot of fun to play around with, like
Yeah.
just swapping these costume pieces. Both of those shows, by the way, Character Fondue and Dycentennial, are shows that I would love to do show and tell episodes about.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be cool. All right.
Cool. So you got another one on your side? Another question for us, Bob?
Yes. Oh, sorry. From an anonymous student, improv often involves the audience to yell a suggestion. Every so often, every so often, and then mostly. Oh my god, this is weird. ever so often and then mostly ignores them for the rest of the show, sometimes only paying lip service to the suggestion itself. Is that enough, or should we be doing more? So basically, should we be doing more with suggestions rather than just kind of using them? If you know, because that does happen, like
Yeah.
where you get the suggestion and you kind of just give it a nod and don't really
Yeah.
dive
Yeah.
into what this could be.
Yes. This is what I would campaign for. I would campaign for if you are the type of improviser or team that is more likely to take a sort of obligatory suggestion and do a montage, then I would suggest not taking a suggestion. Like, and I know that that is such a golden rule of like we gotta incorporate the audience and prove that it's improvised, but like I don't I think that TJ and Dave do not own the idea of
Nope.
not taking a suggestion. There's other
There's yeah.
Pointless does it. Uh
Blitzman, Rosowski, they all
Wazowski does it.
yeah.
Yeah. I think
Rosowski's got the best take on it. He's like, it says improv on the building. They bought a ticket that says improv. We don't have to show people that it's all made up. We already told them it's all, you know.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That's my campaign is like if you're not doing enough with it, don't get one. I think that that's some of my favorite stuff. Like up until moving from Michigan,
yeah.
some of my favorite shows were at Pointless because it was the only place that didn't use a suggestion, and it was this new playground for a way to start a show, and I thought that was so cool. And then on the flip side is that I think that if you do want to use a suggestion or for whatever reason that's just not you're not going to go to not using one, then yeah, you should have something specific in mind that you're planning to do with it and have a philosophy of why you're using it, whether that comes from the form or the playing style of the troupe or just
Right.
what you want the audience to get from your show. I think that you should be particular about what you want to do with that suggestion.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on where you are as a group. And I like to think about it in these terms. Like we spend like all our intro classes learning these line games and how to take a suggestion. Because basically, isn't one of the main things we learn from line games is how to take something like a suggestion and use it in interesting ways. You know, 1001 blank, and I can make 1001 blank jokes just using one suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And how to apply that to scene work, you know?
That's a great
you
point.
know, things you never hear is another great example. Like, what a great way to start a scene. But can we come back to it? Can we really dive? Honestly, I think using a suggestion and just really focusing on what to do with that suggestion is a really interesting challenge. And honestly, if you're doing it right, it makes improvising that much easier because you're sticking to the same subject. An annoying habit I see people do is switching up what the scene is rather than sticking to what the scene promise and at the beginning. So if the promise is we're going to take the suggestion and make something out of it, yeah, do that and do that very well. Dig and like we said with the chairs, like it may be a mundane, boring suggestion, but how can you use it? How can you make it different? How can you innovate it? Because that's the challenge, right? We tell people we're taking this suggestion to prove to you that it's not made up. If you're only taking the suggestion and maybe making a reference to it, how is that proving to the person that it's made up? Because this could be a written scene with a green light in the middle of it where we say, and then the dentist came, you know, or, you know, like you have a completely different thing. But,
Yeah. There's definitely such thing as overusing a suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
There's a really great segment about it in McNapier's behind the scenes about if I'm remembering right, he basically says that like use it early and clearly so that you honor the fact that you took it and the audience can see how you're using it. For the rest of the show, gently, lightly incorporate it or remind the audience that it's there if you can. And if you don't, the audience is more likely to do the work for you and see your suggestion in the performance in ways that you're maybe not even intending. And then by the end, if you can return to it before you're done, that's all the better is to bring it full circle to something in the beginning. Because again, just using it in the beginning is not enough to really prove in a long form show that that it's improvised. By the end of it, if you connect what happened in the beginning, then that kind of puts the validity on the whole show, because you can't have pre-planned the end if it had to do with the thing in the beginning that was very clearly improvised.
Right.
I love that what you said about the short form comparison, Bob. I think that that's a really great way to think about it, is that if
Yeah.
you were doing a line game and you can use this suggestion in 10 different ways to make 10 different punchlines, apply that same idea to a montage or whatever else. Is there's so much in there to like mine from in ways taken different directions and kind of like riff on it.
Yeah. Because I think one of the limitations people give themselves is how they ask for the suggestion and try to use that suggestion that same way within the scene. Like, what's something you'd find in the kitchen? Oh, spatula. So obviously, I could only use spatula as a spatula in a kitchen, you know. But when I hear it, I think of there's that writing technique where I think it's called either spider webbing, where you take a suggestion and then you think about you make 5 different categories: emotion, character, blah blah blah, and then from there you expand from that. I like to think about it that way. Like spatula. Well, my dad used to make pancakes all the time, and when he would, he would sing. So maybe now my character sings all the time, like, and he would make up these weird songs. I loved it. So like jumping into that with that emotion, with that character gift, that's who I am. I don't have to cook. I don't have to, but maybe to show the audience, you know, we're using it. Also use a spatula as a spatula, but not necessarily that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep. Yeah. Use a spatula as a spatula, and then use a spatula as a metaphor.
Right.
Yeah.
Or yeah, or a choice. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So we have time for one more question, and we're going to make it Tim's question, who
All
chimed in the
right.
comments here. This is a great question. He asks, do you think theaters could help provide opportunities for improvisers who aren't students anymore, but aren't on a team? Maybe opportunities to use space for a cost to get together and practice. Otherwise, it's been hard even before the pandemic to get involved. And this is one of those really tough conundrums
Right.
of a theater and a community, um, in providing opportunity,
Right.
because right out the gate, the thing that comes to my mind is that there are so many people who are on involved or getting regular stage time at a place like Pointless or Go, or with like the farm team and the home team at the Ant, and you know they're not even necessarily doing improv every night of the week, is not their program. But even for
Right.
places that do have that, the theaters that are improv shows 5 to 7 days a week, you have like a resident cast or house team members, and that can get up to like 100 people, who even just keeping them in regular rotation can be
Yeah.
a big challenge. And then to also provide opportunity for people, student opportunities, and also that gap between completing a program and getting into that 100-person pool. It's tough to spread everything around it enough to really satisfy everyone.
Yeah. So you're talking pre-pandemic, like situational, like
Yeah.
yeah, and I agree. Like there are opportunities like the jams and everything, um, and I'm having a rough time answering this because I also think of the theater as a business too. So they have to, you know, I've read a couple of like Yelp reviews of different theaters where someone walked in during like an unpolished show and complained. You pay $5, you want a good show. I don't know what that guy did for $5. It could have been like a lot of hard yard work or something. They want their money's worth. So you can't create too much opportunity, but you should create. There's got to be a balance there,
Yeah.
And I do think there should be opportunity to play because that's how you grow by playing. But also like you don't need the theater to create opportunity. Like there have been so many, like we've both ran pop-ups coming up because we wanted more opportunity.
Yeah.
The second part of your question, um, go to different go to these different shows and stuff. Start meeting people. Part of this, we're creating by committee. We have to become part of the community to seek out other people who are like-minded or interesting improvisers to perform with. So networking is part of that too. I mean, I do think all the theaters I've worked for or performed at have programs in place like the Launch Group or the Shadow League or the Farm Team to put you together, but that doesn't necessarily always work either. Like, this is your art. You should seek it out. You should seek people who are like-minded and are willing to put into work whatever you think that work should be to create a show that you guys are proud of.
Yeah.
And I think there's got to be balance what the theater does and what you as an artist does. And I think there can be maybe more, but I've noticed some people take those opportunities for granted. I wish everybody was like Tim and just really wanted to play and would really, step up when these opportunities present themselves. But unfortunately, people use these opportunities to rehearse rather than to perform. So that would, again, all these theaters are businesses and have to keep that in mind. AMC can't play all student movies because who would come to AMC other than, it's
Yeah.
It's true. Like, you gotta get I'm not calling myself a blockbuster, but you gotta get like some quality films in there. But right now during the pandemic, it's even harder because I don't know what the liability for a theater would be if they allowed people to come and use their space. Like, I haven't been able to go since April.
Yeah, which I'm sure that's not what Tim is asking. But
okay, yeah.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob, just on this point of like being able to use the theater space for indie teams. I remember it being that basically if you had a coach that was basically a key holder or a house team member at the theater, that you have access as long as it's available as a space with a coach.
Yeah.
Right.
And basically rent was you paid your coach for my understanding. I don't know if anything changed, but yeah, there's opportunity.
Yeah. So and I think that my broad answer is to the initial question, Tim, if should theaters provide opportunities for improvisers in that kind of interim between being students and being cast members. I think that yes. I think that it's great for every theater to have some kind of indie feature night, whether it's proving grounds or bits as a tournament, or mixers and jams. There's lots of really cool ways to do that, and it's probably only going to take up so much of the calendar, but I think it should be there. And I think if any theater isn't doing that, then they're shooting themselves in the foot for like the next generation that's working their way up to being a team member. And the challenge is, again, that like I also understand that like there's a lot of moving parts to even just programming and creating the resources for cast members, and that again, just to echo Bob's point, is that it also is like if you present an idea and you're like, man, I have an idea for like a way to get people a show idea, names in a hat, and it's cast members, students, and people in between, and you just draw names in a hat, and here's like the game show format or whatever. That's probably more likely to happen, is if you have an idea or a format for it to present, then you're in a really good spot to at least pitch it and help them help you. And if not, then yeah, exactly like Bob said, you can also find your own way to do that in a different space, and maybe build a relationship with whether it's a bar or a dance studio or some kind of space that can be used for the same purposes as a improv rehearsal space, when it's available, but it's just a little bit more on you to do the work to seek it out. That's all.
All right.
Groovy. Tim, thanks so much for the question.
Yeah, buddy. Hope you're doing good.
Yeah,
Well,
appreciate it. And
Superman
yeah,
does good.
I see. Yeah, I see that you're. Tim mentioned that he's doing all the digital jams. And
good.
I think that's. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it too, because that's also how you're going to meet people. Tim also said that his circle might be a little small, but the best way to build your circle of people and resources, of people in that same position with the same goals, is to put yourself out there and keep an eye out for exactly who your people are.
Right. Well, I mean, look at you. Like, you started out with just you and Alex.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You just built from there. Like,
yep.
And Tim totally can do that. He's a good dude.
Yep. Absolutely. So thanks everyone for tuning in and for the comments. This is I'm very happy with how our first one here went. I think that this is a great opportunity to do Q&As and to engage live audience for questions when you have them. So if you like it and you want to see more, give us a thumbs up. Even better if you want to follow on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel for Improv FAQ. That goes a long way. And of course, hit that notification bell so that you can get
appreciated.
a heads up when we release videos and do live streams, schedule them like this. Also, a friendly reminder that we are in a podcast version now as well through Gabber Media. We have 20 episodes released anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And we are releasing those in 10 episode batches just to get caught up with where we're at with the episodes on YouTube and Facebook. And so just be aware that if you are more of a podcast listener, you can find us there too. And sooner than later, we'll be caught up with current episodes for the more recent content, YouTube and Facebook. Thanks again for joining, and we'll catch you next time on Improv FAQ at length.
Bye.
Bye.